Hello and welcome to the Strange Brew podcast. My name's Jason Barnard and that was Chester Thompson and Hide and Seek from his latest album Wake Up Call, and that's because I've got Chester here today on the Strange Brew to talk about his solo work, time playing on drums for the likes of Frank Zappa, Weather Report and of course Genesis. So let's hear my chat with Chester. Hello.
Hey, hello.
Fantastic. I really enjoyed listening to your new album, Wake Up Call, because in a way you seem to be sort of pushing boundaries.
Well, not intentionally. I mean, it's honest. The difference, I think, it was done during the pandemic, during lockdown. And so basically, long story short, every song started with me laying down a drum track, sending it to friends who were my first band that I ever had in LA. And I thought I was just sending them a track to just jam to, just something to play along with. The third track on the song, Hide and Seek, was the first thing I sent them. They wrote around it, and it really kind of shocked me what they sent back. I was not expecting that by any means. They're really good players. It's a husband and wife, bass player Pee Wee Hill and his wife Michiko. A couple of the guitar players had been in that band that we had, Caleb Quay and a guy named Ronnie Van. And my son plays some guitar on it as well. And then we added some horns on a couple of things. But yeah, all the basic songs were written starting with me laying down a drum track. In a couple of cases, I sent a melody that I had in mind, and she went on to develop that as well. So it's different because it started with drums, with me playing whatever I wanted to play.
Yeah, so it's a real interesting way of getting the creativity with the musicians that you collaborate, because on the whole, they were working with the drum track and then were free to be inspired by it.
Exactly. Whatever they came up with, that's what it was. I mean, when I write myself, I start with a rhythm. Either I lay down something on the drums, or maybe I'll fool around with the drum machine just to set an atmosphere. And then I write, I start with the melody and then harmonize it later. Because if you lay down a rhythm, a different rhythms, you're going to come up with a different melody. So I think that's kind of organic way to do it,
And how does that compare with the material that you've done with the trio that you've had?
Right. Well, it's completely different. I mean, because with the trio, there was some original material. Eventually, we started with like sort of jazz covers, but then there started to be more original stuff. But that's still one person, pretty much mostly writing the tune. Maybe we got together and helped polish it a bit. But no, this was completely different in that. Yeah. As a drummer, sometimes when I'm just sitting around jamming or practicing or something, I'll come up with a rhythm and I'll think, man, it'd be nice if there was a song where I could actually use something like this, Well, this time I got to set the tone because I played first,
Are there any particular tracks that surprised you in a good way? I'm particularly fond of Sunrise, for example.
Sunrise was the second track I sent to them. After they sent back the first one, I thought, well, let's try this again. So I just sat down and played something completely different to the first one, obviously. And so what they came up with that time really blew me away. It's like, okay, this is amazing. And we just kept doing it. It took over a year because I'd get an idea and I'd send it to them. They tour with their daughter. Her name is Judith Hill, which is, man, she's amazing. And so they tour with her. And as soon as, lockdown was starting to lift, they were getting busy with that. And then they had a project of their own they were doing as well. So sometimes I have to wait for them to get around to whatever I sent them, but it worked out,
Is it a way of creating music that you'd foresee yourself doing in the future as well?
I think maybe. Yeah, no, I've never done it before, not like that. I've sat around and jammed with guys locally, and we maybe eventually, come together again and sort of work on it a bit more. I've done that a couple of times. But never where I just sent out a drum track and they were free to do whatever they wanted, I would really look forward to doing that again, actually.
You've got a unique style for drummers. Is it the flute that you can also play? Do you think that that's an influence?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, I started out, my very first drum lessons were jazz. The teacher I had was a family friend.
Right.
I mean, he had played when I grew up, it was soul music, in the 60s. So he had done all of that, and he just really only wanted to do jazz at that point. So when I went to him for lessons, I had started playing in school band and reading music and just, sort of the one snare drum and all that thing. So when I started going to his house, he would put on jazz albums and teach me how to play along, explain to me what the drummers were doing, what to listen for, that kind of thing. And it's a very different independence than playing, say, a rock beat or something. You learn patterns playing rock and stuff.
Yeah.
But with this, each limb has to be you learn to do various things with each limb, like in an ongoing spur of the moment basis, I think that set the tone. And that the music I grew up with, the soundtrack of my youth, as they say, was the soul music, the early Motown, James Brown, when all his stuff was new and all that. And plus, I got to see all the live shows. We had a theater in town that was part of the circuit. You've maybe heard of the Apollo Theater in New York.
Yeah.
Well, there was a whole series of those theaters, and my city had one. And so every other week, I would see a live show of all these amazing artists from the 60s. And so I'd be studying the drummers and all of that. But I was also drawn, I just love music. I was always drawn to hearing different stuff. And as I got more into it, I was always open to try something new. So I ended up, there was an really good art university, art college there in town. And you'd get artists that decided they want to do music. So, I ended up playing some really wacky experimental stuff every now and then. And I was just always quite curious about all kinds of music. So I'm not a purist. I started with jazz. I've played lots of funk, grew up playing lots of that. Obviously played prog rock and all the early, when I started with Genesis, there weren't really any hit songs. It was all prog rock.
Yeah.
So, all of those things for me, just that completes the picture for me. So I try to listen musically. I guess a lot of times I don't maybe think like a drummer in some respects. If I've got to take a solo, for example, I don't think drums. I think melodies. And my favorite inspiration to put together a drum solo, I listen to classical music because they have movements, they develop themes and all that kind of thing.
So you mentioned soul music. So I think one of the first artists you played with that many of us would know was Benny King, wasn't it?
I did, yeah. Did a small tour with him. I was approached to go out with Wilson Pickett back in the day, and it didn't. Well, I ended up not doing it because I found out some things. I just found out things I don't think I want to do this.
Right.
But yeah, he was the first. It's funny enough, I think he might be the only sort of soul artist I've really toured with or done it. And most of what I've done, between Zappa and Weather Report and, Genesis, of course, Phil was probably the closest because he was a big soul fan and a lot of his things kind of went in that direction. But no, my life has been, when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a jazz drummer and just play quiet, tasty jazz all the time. And little did I know that I was going to make a living just beating the crap out of the drums,
Zappa, your jazz background must have come in real handy. It seemed quite demanding to play at times.
Well, the music was demanding. Frank was demanding only in the sense that he wanted it played correctly. I didn't find him harsh or hard to work with at all. You do the work, you basically, the music was very difficult. My first month in the band and rehearsal went on for a month. You rehearsed 40 hours a week. You did 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. My typical day, I'd, have breakfast, go do the gig, have dinner after the gig. I was staying in a hotel at first. I'd go to bed around 11, wake up around 3, practice for 2 hours, go back to sleep, get back up, go to breakfast, and just that was my routine every day in order to really learn that music. That's what it took, but I was quite happy to do it, So I think the fact that I did work hard and was able to learn what he wanted, we got on just fine.
Was it at one time you had 2 drummers in the group?
There were 2 drummers when I started with Zappa, yes.
Right.
And which was a great thing for me. I got the job, the reason I got the call, a friend of mine was his tour manager. And I guess Frank mentioned one day that the band had gotten so perfect, he felt the music was getting a bit sterile. And he decided, he said he was thinking of adding a second drummer, someone with more of a street feel, is how he put it. And so my friend spoke up and said, I have the guy for you. And I got my audition. I just showed up. We just jammed for an hour straight. We went from style to style. We played funk, we played reggae, we played some jazz, we played blues, just without stopping. We just flowed from one thing to the other. And that's what he was looking for, the feel that I brought. I still had to learn all of that really crazy, difficult stuff, of course, but it worked out because I guess, my natural sort of feel of things brought to what was already going on seemed to work for him. So
was Weather Report closer to your jazz roots then?
Oh, absolutely. Very much so. It wasn't straight ahead swing jazz by any means, but I had been in a lot of different, by then, I started doing clubs at 13. So by the time I, was at that point, I'd had a lot of experience playing lots of different styles of music. And the thing with Weather Report, it was jazz, but it was very fresh. It wasn't like the same old stuff, So it was really kind of a blend of like really intense funk, but pure improvisations, not where you play a beat throughout the song. You had to be able to move and function. And so my way of looking at it back, it's a bit funny, but I say that I learned how to play all the notes with Zappa, and with Weather Report, I had to learn which ones to leave out, and at the same time, the version of Weather Report I was in, Alphonso Johnson and myself, the bass player, it was pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard Black Market or any of that stuff, but it was pretty aggressive stuff.
it seemed almost the perfect grounding for Genesis, in that English progressive rock is quite different, but some of the tools that you had were a perfect fit for Genesis.
Well, it really did work out well for me, obviously, and hopefully for them as well. I mean, they've been very complimentary over the years. Yeah, and well, I mean, the thing is, Phil was a big fan. The same influences, really, the same jazz players that I listened to, he listens to as well. He was a big soul music fan, of course. And so the difference being the other side of his main influences were the Who, Beatles, obviously, Zeppelin. So, I didn't hear as much of that growing up because those were my really heavy jazz years, trying to really listen into the more intense jazz and digging more into playing that way. So, yeah, first day of rehearsals, the very first day there, we just started jamming together. Phil and I, everybody else was still setting up and doing their thing, and him and I were just going at it. And it was a perfect fit. It just, it locked in immediately. We didn't have to talk about anything. The one thing he did say was like, okay, how do you play the fill? And I knew exactly what he was talking about. There was a thing with Zappa with 2 drummers that we did, and which showed up in Afterglow, one of the early Genesis tunes.
Like the dust that settles all around me, I must find a new home. Ways and hopes used to give me shelter. They're all as one to me now. But I would search everywhere just to hear your call. Walk upon stranger roads than this one in a while. I used to know before. I miss you more. Then the sun reflecting off my pillow, bringing warm a new life. And the sound that echoed all around me, I got a glimpse of in the night. Now, I've lost everything I give to you, my soul, the meaning of all that I knew before escapes me in this world of none, no thing, no one. Just to hear your call. Walk upon stranger roads than this one in a while. I used to know before, and now I've lost everything I give to you,
there's some great moments. You and Phil there were times you'd get on the kit together. Those early tours that you had, I think one for the Vine might be one of those moments where you were sort of collaborating together on drums.
We did a lot of double drumming, actually. I mean, because so much of the early stuff had these instrumental sections, there were a couple where maybe he would just play the whole thing, but for the most part, most of it we did together. You had to change it around a bit to, we wrote in parts that worked for both of us and stuff. And he added some fills where we could do double things and stuff. But yeah, it was a great drummer's gig for sure.
What was your sort of steer to how close you needed to be to the original drum patterns? Did you have to stick closely to that?
I tried to be, yeah. I mean, I knew that I was being hired to do what he did on recordings because suddenly he's out front singing. I mean, so it wasn't like I was there to sort of, I wasn't offered a membership in the band or anything like that, I was there as sort of a utility guy to recreate what he had. So for me, it was a cover gig. For me, it was like the world's best cover gig. So I'm playing somebody else's parts. As we would tour, then my own feel would come through, of course. But no, I never set out to try to make it mine. I never really set out to try to learn to do what he had done on the songs because the recordings were brilliant. I mean, they really were. I had great respect for that stuff when I heard it.
Misplaced football made him stray from the path prepared for him. Up off the mountain onto a wilderness of ice. This unexpected vision made him stand and shake with fear. Nothing was as bright who saw him appear. Terror filled their minds with awe. The simple world of folk who live upon this frozen wave. So not surprising was their thought. This is we, God's chosen one. He's come to save us from all our oppressors. We shall be kings on this world. He walked into a valley Then he told me water and then with the fire. must lead them to glory, almost like lead to death. Travel across the plateau of ice up to its edge. Then they crossed the mountain range and saw the final plain. Still he urged his people on. Then on the distant slope he observed one without hope. He back up the mountainside. He thought he recognized him by his walk, by the way he fell, and by the way he stood up and vanished into air.
Do you have any memories of playing with Steve Hackett?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did that, of course. I mean, and him and I became very good friends on the Genesis tour as well. So, you know, that first year was pretty amazing for me. It was so different from anything I'd done in the places we played and all of that. Yeah, those were, nothing sticks out as far as stories and that, but the whole thing was just a really good time, actually, you know.
How did things shift a bit when Daryl was playing with the band in the live setting? It must have been nice to have someone else from America as opposed to these English gentlemen.
Right. Well, it raised the level of everything, because I think they might have been a bit intimidated with his musicianship, because he's brilliant. And he actually played more bass than guitar in the beginning, because Mike had decided when Steve Hackett left, he wanted to do lead guitar. So it was really interesting, because he's got this absolutely amazing guitarist playing bass while he's learning to play lead guitar at the beginning. But I think his influence brought a level. I think in general, in those days, I don't think it's still the case, but I think American musicians in general, especially us that grew up playing cover tunes for the most part, so we had to learn to play things exactly. There was just I think composition, you know, being creative and writing original material was much more prevalent in England. Tony Banks once said to me, well, we were really more concerned with playing what we wrote. We weren't trying to be like hotshot musicians or something, you know, which, you know, fair enough. But I think over the years, they're playing just really, I mean, everybody's playing improved, I think. I mean, but Tony and Mike, man, they really, I think Daryl raised the bar and they leveled up to it, you know.
It seemed only a few years before the style of Genesis evolved.
Right.
By the early 80s, it was more accessible and less of that English progressive element. Abacab, for example. How did that affect you in terms of playing some of that material live?
Oh, well, obviously, some of it was maybe more natural for me, but to their credit, I don't think they set out to try to write hit songs. They were just great composers. They were great writers. I think they made that transition that it didn't necessarily take 7 minutes, 10 minutes, and 3 or 4 movements to make a song work. They learned how to say what they had to say in one song that happened to be 4 or 5 minutes, and even less as time went on. But I don't think they compromised the integrity of what they did in search of hits. I know a lot of the early prog fans always felt like they sold out. But seeing how hard they worked and the way that they really worked at what they were doing, I don't feel it was that way at all. Yeah, I mean, part of that, I think, suddenly the world got smaller in the sense that the internet, I mean, once the internet happened, oh goodness, then the world really shrunk, because now we can listen to music from anywhere and be influenced by it, you know? That wasn't the case in the very beginning, but then you started to get things like MTV and things where I think the influence became more universal. But I think it was really more a product of their own writing evolving. And for me, I mean, it was great because even almost every album, there was still like a prog piece in there. There was always like a pretty extended prog piece that was pretty true to what they started at.
And as we get into the 80s and onwards, whether it was with Phil or with Genesis, the show seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. You know, there was nights with 80,000 maybe at Wembley. And
yeah, it grew. It really grew. Well, the songs were getting, more and more popular, and it was pretty amazing to be a part of that. Because when I started, we were playing pretty small, very small theaters. My very first tour was around the UK, and it was, anything that they could squeeze people into was the venue. A lot of places were never meant to have music that we played, and we literally circled the island, doing this tour. To see it grow to that was pretty amazing, actually.
Do you have any recollections of playing at the Milton Keynes Bowl when Peter Gabriel was back playing with them? I think 1982.
Six of the best thing, yeah. Not a lot. I mean, there was a lot of buzz about it. I know people came from all over the world. It was amazing to see it. Unfortunately, there was never a video made. They tried. But the problem was that Peter is so spontaneous. There were these conversations with the sound engineer that, okay, for this song, you will be on which position on stage, because he had about 3 or 4 mics set up in different locations. And he was never at the one that he said he was going to be at. So by the time they got his voice properly in the mix, it almost moved on. They'd end up missing, several lines or whatever. So there was never enough to get a proper recording of it, which is really unfortunate, because I really felt like it was a great show, and the audience response seemed to verify that.
Climbing up on Salisbury Hill, I could see the city light. Wind was blowing, time stood still. Eagle flew out of the night. He was something to himself. Came in close, I heard a voice, standing, stretching every nerve. I had to listen, had no choice. I did not believe the information. I just started to trust imagination. My heart going boom, boom, boom. Son, he said, grab your things, I'll come take you home. Silence, I was on. My friends would think I was a nut, and throw to into wine. Oh, my nose would soon be shut. So I went from day to day, though my life was in a rut, till I thought of what I'd say, or which connection I should cut. I was feeling part of the scenery. I won't try others on the machinery. My heart going boom, boom, boom. Son, he said, grab your things, I'm gonna take you home. Home. In her net, I'm never where I wanna be. A liberty she threw wet. Oh, when I think that I am free, watch my empty silhouette, close their eyes and look. No one taught them etiquette. I will show another me. Today I don't need a replacement. I show them what the smile on my face meant. My heart going boom, boom, boom. Son, he said, you can keep the things I'm gonna take you home. Yeah, back home.
Was it 2007, the last Genesis tour?
The last one that I was a part of, yes, was 2007.
Was it a few years after that, the last one with Phil?
In 2010, when he did his Motown thing, that was the last thing I did with him.
Was Phil's health, was it starting to affect him by then? I guess it made things more difficult.
A bit, yeah, it was. Yeah, it wasn't a particularly great time. Yeah, I kind of sort of shove it in the back. It wasn't a great time. So I was very happy to see that Nick got to be a part of it and got to play with his dad. I thought that was pretty cool.
Over the last decade, you've been doing your own projects like the trio.
Right.
Have you got any highlights from those records and those tours?
Well, yeah, I mean, my first solo record was in '91, actually. Yeah, that's my very first solo thing. That's the only one I did while living in LA. I ended up moving to Nashville in '93. So the trio formed. We ended up being the rhythm section for a sort of a festival that was happening in town. We were playing with all sorts of different people. And we got on so well, we thought, well, let's, start booking some gigs. And we started doing gigs, and which eventually led to, rearranging some existing sort of jazz classics, and then writing, the writing started happening. And yeah, I think we started in 2011, maybe something like that. I mean, in the meantime, I'm playing, besides country, I mean, country's the main thing that people associate with Nashville, but Nashville probably has more world-class musicians in a small space that I've ever been a part of. All kinds of great jazz and rock musicians. I mean, it's all here. It reminds me a bit of when I first started going to London, because music was such an important part of the culture, And it's a bit of that, it's kind of that feel here, and not obviously different culture, but yeah, music here is really important to people. So we ended up playing together, and it just really clicked in a way that I don't think any of us had ever quite experienced, playing jazz and stuff. And so we just went from there. And then it's like, well, let's do a recording. Let's go for it, We did 2 of them, and we hired a radio promoter, and they did really well. Not so much sales, but as far as getting attention. And first one went to number 6 in the country, and the next one went to number 4 in the country, actually. That ended up breaking up. The pianist moved to New York. The bass player ended up with a really profitable road gig, So couldn't fault him that, Yeah, so it was just lots and lots more freelance. And then I did another solo thing, which same piano player, and brought in Alfonso. Alfonso were friends long before Weather Report. We had, we grew up on the East Coast, and we crossed paths early on, and would just jam a lot and play together when we could. And so, yeah, I got to do this other one. And then this last one, I think I'm more excited about the last one than any of the other stuff I've done,
Are there any particular tracks off the last one that you...
Oh, goodness. Well, I think it's the first thing I've done where I really love all of it. A couple of things I wasn't sure about, but as they formed, as they come together, and like I say, we started bringing in guitars as needed, and everything else, and percussion and stuff. I don't think there's nothing on there that I would discount. I mean, sometimes I've done things where it's like, I love this and that, that one not so much. But no, this is the first time I've been really quite happy with all of it,
Wake Up Call, that might be a template that you carry on with then?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I'd like that we did it that way, and that it worked out. I'll speak with them soon, and if they're up for doing another one that way. We're really hoping to get to tour doing the music from Wake Up Call. We really want to do that. Their schedules are crazy. I've been a bit busy, these last things are getting I went through a thing about a year ago. I had a bit of a leg injury. I wasn't able to play, wasn't able to play for a period there, but that's all behind me now. And it's like, so I'm just really excited, to be playing again and being able to dive in. Yeah, it'll be time to start talking with them, talking about how to approach doing another one. I might end up going to LA or bringing them here and playing live, which we used to do all the time. Like I say, when we were that first band of mine, we played a lot. I mean, every week, it didn't matter whether there was a gig. We were always writing, practicing, jamming, and it got so tight. The crazy thing about Wake Up Call, the people that were that band, we had not played together in 30 years.
Wow.
But that's how much we played at that time. We just set up a foundation that obviously still held up.
That's great. And it's great to hear that you're still recording more than ever. You're ready for live gigs, and there's so much more to come. Chester, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you, man. I really enjoyed speaking with you. And if I can ever get back to England, which I really miss, man, I miss being over there because I love London. I definitely hope we can get together and meet in person.
That would be wonderful. Hopefully, fingers crossed. All
right, Jason. Great, very good to meet you. And thank you for the interview, man.
My pleasure. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Strange Brew podcast. If you do like the show, please consider a small donation to help keep the show archive online. It's 10 years since I started the podcast, and hosting fees are increasing over time. All your support keeps the show running and helps me get amazing guests. To support me, just go to thestrangebrew.co.uk where you'll see a donate button on the homepage. Thank you very much, Plus, any reviews on your podcast services help to spread the word too. Thank you.